Princess Elena of the Velker Empire stood in the observation deck of the royal transport ship, watching stars blur past the viewport. She had no idea these would be her last moments of peace. No idea that her life was about to shatter like glass. The delegation mission to the outer colonies had gone smoothly. Too smoothly, she realized now. Every smile from her guards had been a mask. Every word of loyalty had been a carefully crafted lie. The blade came from behind. Fast, silent, deadly. Elena's reflexes saved her life by mere inches. She twisted at the last second, and the knife meant for her heart carved through her ceremonial robes instead, slicing deep into her side. The pain exploded through her body like fire and she gasped, stumbling forward. Her guard captain, Derek, stood behind her with the bloodied blade. His face showed no remorse. No hesitation. Just cold ambition and the satisfaction of a plan coming together. "Your uncle sends his regards, Your Highness," Derek said, his voice dripping with mockery. "The throne needs a stronger ruler. Someone who understands power. Not a weak little telepath who thinks she can lead an empire." Elena pressed her hand against the wound, feeling her violet blood seep hot and sticky between her fingers. Her mind raced. Derek had been with her family for years. She had trusted him. They all had. "Why?" she managed to whisper, backing toward the corridor. Derek laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the empty observation deck. "Why? Because your uncle offered me something you never could. Real power. A position in the new order. Your father made the Velker soft, Princess. Your uncle will make us strong again." Elena turned and ran. Or tried to. Her legs felt weak and the pain in her side made every step agony. She could hear Derek's boots behind her, steady and unhurried. He was not worried. He knew she had nowhere to go. The main corridor opened before her and her heart sank. 3 more guards blocked her path. Their weapons were drawn, their faces hard. These were men she had known since childhood. Guards who had sworn oaths to protect her. All of them bought with promises of wealth and position. "End of the line, Princess," one of them said. But Elena was not heading for the main corridor. She veered left, toward the emergency systems. Derek realized too late what she was doing. "Stop her," he shouted. Elena slammed her palm against the emergency pod bay controls. The doors hissed open, and she threw herself inside the nearest escape pod. Derek reached the doorway just as the pod sealed shut. Through the transparent door, Elena saw his face twisted with rage. Then he smiled, and that smile was worse than his anger. "The pods only go one direction, Princess," Derek said, his voice coming through the pod's communication system. "To Outpost 7. The Death World. The place where the Galactic Council dumps things they want to forget." His hand moved to the launch controls on the wall panel. "Your uncle wanted you dead. But this is better. Let the planet do the work. Let you suffer first." The launch sequence activated. Red lights flashed. Warning sirens blared. Elena barely had time to strap herself into the crash seat before the pod shot forward, launching into space with crushing force. Her people, the Velker, were telepaths. They had conquered entire star systems through their mental abilities, bending others to their will, reading thoughts, predicting moves. But they were physically weak. Their bodies were fragile. Evolution had favored their minds at the expense of everything else. And now Elena was being sent to a world where the mind meant nothing. Where only the body mattered. Where survival depended on strength she did not have. The pod shook violently as it entered the planet's atmosphere. Through the small viewport, Elena saw clouds the color of poison, forests that looked like they were made of knives, and mountains that seemed to claw at the sky. This was Outpost 7. The world humans had tried to colonize 50 years ago and failed. The world they had abandoned because even they could not tame it. The crash was brutal. Trees exploded around the pod as it tore through the forest canopy. Metal screamed. Elena screamed. Then everything went still. She kicked the pod door open and crawled out into hell. The air smelled wrong, thick with chemicals that burned her lungs. Strange sounds echoed through the forest, animal calls that made her blood run cold. In the distance something roared. Elena pressed forward, leaving a trail of violet blood behind her. Her telepathic mind reached out, sending distress calls into the void. But space was vast and her people were far away. No one was close enough to hear. No one was coming to save her. Her legs gave out. She collapsed in the dirt, vision blurring. Through the haze she saw ruins ahead. Old structures, human-made, covered in vines and decay. The outpost humans had built and abandoned. And then she saw them. Footprints in the soft earth. Large. Four-toed. Clawed. Something lived here. Something had survived where humans could not. Elena's last conscious thought was a simple one, primal and terrifying. She was not alone. Darkness swallowed her whole, and the alien forest closed in around her broken body. Elena woke to warmth. Real warmth. Not the sterile, artificial heat of medical pods that her people used, but something different. Something alive. Her eyes opened slowly, her vision blurry at first. She tried to move and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through her side where the blade had cut her. But she was alive. Somehow, impossibly, she was still breathing. The first thing she noticed was the blanket covering her. No, not a blanket. Multiple blankets, layered carefully over her body. They were old, faded, with human writing on them that she could barely read. Thermal blankets from some emergency supply kit. Someone had placed them over her. Someone had cared whether she lived or died. Elena lifted her head and looked around. She was inside a building. The walls were made of metal and concrete, stained with age and covered in creeping vines. Old equipment lined the walls, most of it broken or dead. This was the human research station she had seen before passing out. Someone had brought her here. Someone had saved her. But who? Then she saw him. Sitting in the doorway, perfectly still, backlit by the planet's strange amber sunlight, was a creature that made Elena's breath catch in her throat. At first, she thought it might be one of the planet's predators. But no. She recognized this animal from her childhood studies of Earth and its creatures. A dog. But this was not like the pictures she had seen in the Galactic archives. Those showed small, fluffy animals sitting on human laps or playing in parks. Cute pets. Harmless companions. This animal was massive. He stood at least waist-high to a human, maybe higher. His fur was thick and colored in shades of rust red and deep black, forming a distinctive saddle pattern across his powerful back and shoulders. His ears stood straight up, alert and constantly moving, catching every sound in the forest beyond. And his eyes. Those amber eyes watched her with an intelligence that sent a shiver down her spine. A German shepherd, her memory supplied. One of Earth's guardian breeds. Bred by humans over thousands of years to protect, to serve, to stand between danger and those who could not defend themselves. The dog tilted his head, studying her. Elena could see his nose twitching, likely smelling her blood, her fear, her alien biology. He was assessing her condition, she realized. Checking if she was a threat or if she needed help. Then he moved. The dog stood smoothly and walked across the room to where several old containers sat against the wall. He lowered his head, gripped one container carefully in his powerful jaws, and dragged it across the floor toward her. Water sloshed inside. Elena stared in disbelief. The Galactic Council had classified dogs as companion animals of limited sentience. They were listed in the same category as decorative fish and singing birds. Pretty to look at, amusing to keep around, but not truly intelligent. Yet here was this creature using tools. Problem-solving. Showing concern for a completely alien being he had never seen before. The dog nudged the water container closer to her with his nose, then stepped back, watching her expectantly. Elena's hands shook as she reached for the container. The water was cool and clean, probably from some stream outside. She drank deeply, not realizing how thirsty she had been. The dog sat down, his tail brushing the dusty floor, and continued to watch her. She had to know. She had to understand what she was dealing with. Elena closed her eyes and reached out with her telepathic senses. Her people could touch the minds of most creatures, reading surface thoughts and emotions. With animals it was usually simple. Basic instincts. Hunger. Fear. The desire to mate or find shelter. Nothing complex. Nothing deep. She touched the dog's mind and gasped. It was like touching fire. Not the destructive kind, but the kind that burned in hearts and kept families warm through cold nights. This was not a simple animal mind. This was something incredible. Loyalty blazed through every thought. Not forced loyalty or trained obedience, but something pure and genuine that ran deeper than instinct. Courage flooded his consciousness, the kind that did not calculate odds or worry about survival. And protectiveness. Such fierce, overwhelming protectiveness that it brought tears to Elena's eyes. Images flooded into her mind through their connection. She saw herself through the dog's eyes. Saw her escape pod tearing through the sky like a falling star. Saw him racing through the forest toward the crash site, driven by curiosity and something else. Something humans had bred into his ancestors 10,000 years ago. The need to help. She saw him find her broken body in the wreckage. Saw him gently grip her clothing in his teeth and drag her through the forest, carefully avoiding obstacles, taking a path he knew was safe. She felt his worry as he brought her to this shelter. felt his determination as he searched for supplies. Blankets, water, anything that might help. And she saw the night. The long, terrible night when the predators came. Creatures with too many teeth and claws like knives, drawn by the smell of her blood. She saw this dog, this guardian, standing at the door. Growling, snarling, making himself look bigger, more dangerous. Fighting when he had to. Driving them away again and again, hour after hour, never leaving his post. Never abandoning her. He had saved her life. Not once but many times over. "You saved me," Elena whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. The dog's tail wagged. Just once. A simple acknowledgement. Then he stood, walked back to the doorway and sat down again. Resuming his watch. Still protecting her. Still standing guard between her and the dangerous world outside. Elena lay back on her makeshift bed, staring at the ceiling. Her entire understanding of the galaxy had just shifted. The Galactic Council had been wrong. They had looked at Earth's creatures and seen simple animals. They had missed something fundamental. Humans had not conquered the stars alone. They had walked into the galaxy with companions beside them. Companions who loved without condition. Who protected without question. Who showed courage that most so-called advanced species could never match. The galaxy had underestimated Earth's creatures. It was a mistake they would not make again. Days passed in a strange rhythm that Elena had never experienced before. There were no clocks here, no schedules, no servants bringing meals at appointed times. Life became simpler. Wake when the amber sun rose. Rest when darkness fell. Survive the hours in between. She named the dog Atlas. The name came from an old Earth story she had studied as a child, about a titan who held up the entire sky on his shoulders. It seemed right for a creature who was carrying the weight of her survival, who stood between her and certain death every single day. Atlas seemed to accept the name. His ears perked up whenever she said it, and his tail would give that single wag of acknowledgement. Elena found herself talking to him constantly, filling the lonely silence of the abandoned outpost with her voice. He would sit and listen, his head tilted, those intelligent amber eyes watching her face as if he understood every word. Maybe he did. She was learning that she had underestimated him in every possible way. Atlas was not just a guard. He was a provider, a teacher, a partner in survival. On the third day, when Elena tried to stand and explore, Atlas blocked her path. He gently pushed her back toward her bed with his nose, making it clear she needed to rest longer. But he did not leave her hungry. He disappeared into the outpost's deeper rooms and returned dragging an old supply crate. Inside were emergency rations, vacuum-sealed packages that humans had left behind 50 years ago. Still good. Still edible. How had he known they were there? Had he explored every inch of this place? Had he been preparing for someone to rescue? Or was he simply smart enough to understand that humans stored food in boxes? Atlas led her to water sources he had already scouted. Streams that ran through natural filters in the rock. Places where the toxic chemicals that poisoned most of the planet's water had been cleaned by the Earth itself. He showed her which pools were safe to drink from and which to avoid. He even brought her food her body could process. Strange fungal growths that looked dangerous but, when Elena scanned them with her handheld device, turned out to be not only safe but nutritious for her biology. Atlas must have tested them somehow, learned through trial and error what made him sick and what did not. The intelligence required for that kind of experimentation made Elena's head spin. But nothing prepared her for watching him hunt. It happened on the 5th day. Elena was stronger now, able to walk without her wound screaming in protest. She stood at one of the outpost's cracked windows, looking out at the alien forest when she saw movement. A rift stalker prowled through the trees. Elena had read about them in the colony warnings. They were apex predators on this world, standing nearly 7 feet tall at the shoulder, covered in natural armor plating that could deflect energy weapons. Their claws secreted a venom that paralyzed prey, and their jaws could crush metal. Humans had lost dozens of people to these creatures before abandoning the outpost. Alice saw it too. He moved to the door, and Elena realized with horror what he was planning. "No," she whispered. "Atlas, that thing will kill you." But he was already gone, slipping out through a gap in the outpost's damaged wall. Elena pressed her face to the window, her heart pounding. She watched Atlas move through the forest like a ghost, silent and purposeful. The rift stalker had not seen him yet. It was focused on something else, some smaller prey it was tracking. Atlas did not attack head-on. He circled, patient, waiting for his moment. Then he barked, loud and sharp. The rift stalker spun toward the sound, abandoning its original prey. It charged toward Atlas with terrifying speed. And Atlas ran. But he was not fleeing in panic. Elena realized he was leading the creature somewhere specific. Through the trees, over rough ground, toward an area where the earth looked different. Softer. Less stable. The Rift Stalker followed, enraged and focused only on catching this smaller animal that dared challenge it. It did not notice the ground changing beneath its feet. Not until it was too late. The creature's weight broke through the surface. Its legs sank into mud that must have been hidden beneath a thin crust of dry earth. The Rift Stalker roared, struggling, but the more it fought, the deeper it sank. Atlas did not hesitate. He darted in low and fast, going for the joints where the armor plates did not quite meet. His teeth found the vulnerable spots that a lifetime of hunting had taught him to recognize. He struck and retreated, never staying close long enough for the creature to counterattack. The battle was not quick. It was brutal and exhausting. But Atlas fought with a patience and tactical awareness that would have impressed any military commander. He used the terrain against his enemy. He waited for it to tire. He struck only when he had the advantage. When it was finally over, Atlas stood panting beside his kill, bloodied but victorious. Elena could barely breathe. She had just watched an Earth animal, classified by the Galactic Council as barely sentient, use strategy that matched her people's best warriors. No, better than her people's warriors. Because Atlas had done it with nothing but his natural abilities and learned experience. Through their growing telepathic bond, Elena saw flashes of his past. 5 decades of dogs living on this world. Atlas was not the first. His grandmother had been among the original dogs humans left behind. Knowledge had been passed down through generations. Which plants were safe, where water could be found, how to hunt the dangerous predators, how to survive. Humans had given these creatures the foundation through thousands of years of breeding and training. But adaptation had made them something more. Something extraordinary. Elena turned back to the communications beacon she had been repairing. Her fingers worked with renewed purpose. The device was old and damaged, but she was making progress. It crackled with static, and then for just a moment she heard something. A signal. Faint but real. She sent out her distress call, encoding her royal signature into the message. Broadcasting it into the void. Hoping someone would hear. Hoping someone would come. Atlas suddenly appeared at her side. His ears shot forward, rigid and alert. A low growl rumbled deep in his chest, and the fur along his spine stood up. "What is it?" Elena asked, her hand dropping to rest on his head. Through their connection she felt what he sensed. Ships. Their engines were still distant, but Atlas's hearing was far superior to hers. Multiple ships. Several were approaching from one direction, their energy signatures feeling familiar. Friendly. Her people. But others came from a different angle. Those felt wrong. Cold. Hostile. Elena's blood went cold as understanding hit her. Her uncle had sent assassins. And they were coming. The darkness wrapped around the outpost like a blanket when they arrived. 5 professional killers moving through the night with deadly purpose. Their leader had trained for situations exactly like this. They wore armor so advanced it could withstand direct hits from the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. The guns they carried could tear through reinforced steel like paper. Their scanning equipment had already pinpointed exactly where Elena was hiding inside the crumbling structure. The team leader checked his display one more time and shook his head. Through his communication device, he spoke to his team with barely concealed contempt. "This is almost too easy. She hasn't even bothered to set up basic security measures around the perimeter. Living out here in the middle of nowhere has made the princess careless. She's forgotten how to protect herself." They moved toward the main entrance with the kind of smooth coordination that comes from years of working together. Each member knew their role perfectly. They had done this kind of operation dozens of times before. Tonight would be no different, or so they thought. Down in the lower levels of the outpost, Elena pressed herself against the cold metal wall. She could feel her heart pounding so hard it seemed like it might burst from her chest. Sweat ran down her face despite the cool air. Her telepathic abilities were powerful, capable of touching minds across great distances, but they weren't meant for combat. She had never been trained as a soldier. She had no weapons, no armor, no way to physically defend herself against trained killers. If they reached her, it would all be over in seconds. But she wasn't alone. The first assassin simply disappeared. One moment he was there, moving through the corridor with his weapon raised. The next moment, nothing. His body crumpled to the ground without making a sound. The others barely had time to notice he had stopped responding before the second one fell. Something had grabbed him from the shadows, and the sound that followed made it clear his expensive armor hadn't protected him at all. Powerful jaws had found the weak points in the seals and torn through them like they were nothing. The team leader finally understood something was very wrong. His voice crackled with sudden urgency over the communication system. Break formation. We have hostile contact. Unknown attacker in the area. Some kind of creature. Repeat, we are under attack. But Atlas was already 3 steps ahead. What these assassins saw as a ruined, abandoned outpost was actually a carefully prepared battlefield. For days, the dog had been making preparations. He had studied every corridor, every room, every shadow. He had set up simple but effective traps. Thin wires stretched across dark passages, connected to piles of debris balanced overhead. Narrow spaces where bulky armor became a disadvantage rather than protection. Every single advantage the building offered had been turned into a weapon. Through the telepathic connection they shared, Elena fed Atlas information. She could sense where the assassins were moving, which directions they planned to go. The dog processed this information instantly, adjusting his strategy moment by moment. What the galaxy's finest military minds had dismissed as an animal acting on simple instinct was actually something far more impressive. This was intelligence, problem-solving, and tactical thinking that matched or exceeded anything these trained killers could do. Atlas wasn't just following programming or basic survival drives. He was thinking, planning, and adapting his approach based on what his enemies did. And he was doing it all for one simple reason that transcended species or planets. He was protecting his family. The 3rd and 4th assassins fell in rapid succession. Their training, their experience, their expensive equipment, none of it mattered. They were fighting an enemy they didn't understand on terrain he had chosen and prepared. The team leader found himself alone. His entire squad, some of the most dangerous people in the galaxy, had been eliminated by a creature that wasn't supposed to be capable of such things. He backed into an open area, weapons sweeping left and right, trying to find a target. His hands were shaking now. Fear had replaced confidence. Then Atlas stepped into the dim light. Blood stained his muzzle, dark against his fur. He positioned himself directly between the last assassin and the doorway that led to Elena. His eyes glowed in the darkness, fixed on the man with absolute focus. There was no aggression in his stance, no wild animal rage. Just cold, calculated determination. He wasn't going to let anyone pass. The team leader's weapon dropped slightly as the full weight of the situation hit him. His voice came out as barely a whisper, filled with disbelief and growing terror. What are you? What kind of creature are you? Atlas moved forward slowly, deliberately. And in those final moments, the assassin understood exactly what this Earth animal was capable of. He understood why the galaxy had been wrong about these creatures. He understood why loyalty and love could make someone more dangerous than any weapon or armor. His screams carried far into the empty night, a warning that would never be heard by those who needed to hear it most. The human cargo ship arrived 2 days after the battle. Its captain, a weathered man who had spent most of his life traveling between distant colonies, brought his vessel down carefully near the outpost. Through the ship's external viewing screens, he and his co-pilot got their first look at what had happened. The co-pilot let out a low whistle of disbelief. Would you look at that? 5 professional assassins all taken down. The way the bodies are positioned, the defensive setup, this wasn't random chaos. Someone planned this out like a military operation. The captain leaned forward, studying the scene more carefully. He had grown up on Earth before his family moved to the outer colonies when he was young. He remembered running through fields with his childhood companion, a loyal dog who had been part of the family for years. Those memories came flooding back as he examined the evidence scattered around the outpost. The way the defensive positions were set up. The strategic placement of the bodies. The protective patterns and how everything had unfolded. It's a dog, he said quietly, certainty in his voice. German Shepherd breed if I'm reading those paw prints in the dust correctly. I'd bet anything on it. His co-pilot turned to stare at him. A dog did all this? One Earth animal took down 5 armed killers. The captain just nodded, a slight smile on his face. You've never had a dog, have you? They're capable of things most species can't even imagine. They made their way into the outpost carefully, calling out to announce their presence. They found Elena deep inside in what had once been a medical treatment area. She sat on the floor next to Atlas, her hand resting gently on his side. Through their telepathic connection she was helping him stay calm, easing the pain in his body. The battle had cost him dearly. His muzzle had gone completely gray now, and fresh wounds crossed over scars from previous fights. He was breathing slowly, each breath an effort. The captain approached slowly, keeping his movements gentle and non-threatening. He knelt down a few feet away and extended his hand, palm down, letting Atlas catch his scent. The old dog lifted his head slightly, sniffed the offered hand, and his tail moved once against the floor in acknowledgement. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes about trust and recognition. The captain's eyes grew wet as he looked at the battle-worn warrior before him. You incredible creature. You held your ground when it mattered most. You didn't let them through. Elena's voice was soft when she spoke, filled with emotion. He saved my life. Not just once but over and over again. When I first met him, the galaxy told me his kind were simple companions. Basic creatures without real intelligence. They said humans had elevated these animals beyond what they deserved. She paused, looking down at Atlas with deep affection. They were so completely wrong. They didn't understand at all. The captain contacted the fleet of loyal supporters who had been searching for Elena. He sent them the coordinates and assured them the princess was safe. While they waited for the ships to arrive, the captain's medical officer did what she could for both Elena and Atlas, treating their injuries and making them as comfortable as possible. 3 days passed before the fleet appeared in orbit. When Elena's supporters finally landed and approached the outpost, they found their missing princess sitting calmly on the front steps. Her hand rested on Atlas's head, and despite everything they had been through, there was peace in her expression. The reunion brought mixed emotions for everyone. Elena's uncle, who had orchestrated the coup and sent assassins after her, was arrested immediately. His plot collapsed once word spread that the rightful heir was alive and safe. Justice was served, and order began to return to the Empire. But even in victory there was sadness. Atlas was dying. The years of fighting, the countless times he had put himself between Elena and danger, the fierce determination with which he had protected her, it had all taken a terrible toll on his aging body. Elena knelt beside him, pressing her forehead gently against his. Through their bond, she sent him images of safety and warmth. Come with me, she whispered, both aloud and through their connection. Come home where you belong. 6 months later, Princess Elena sat upon her throne once again, her rightful place restored. The grand throne room was filled with representatives from across the Empire. But the most unusual sight was what lay beside the throne itself. On a cushion made of royal purple fabric, the color reserved for the highest honors in Velker society, rested Atlas. He was the first non-sentient creature in the entire recorded history of the galaxy to receive a knighthood. The ceremonial armor crafted especially for him bore 2 symbols side by side. One was the ancient crest of the Velker Empire. The other was the seal of Earth, representing the planet that had given birth to his species. 2 worlds connected through the unbreakable bond of loyalty. The entire galaxy watched the ceremony through broadcast networks that reached every inhabited system. They watched and, slowly, they began to understand. Humanity's greatest gift to the stars wasn't advanced technology or scientific discoveries. It was the companions they had walked beside for thousands upon thousands of years. Creatures whose hearts contained more courage than the fiercest warriors. Beings whose loyalty never wavered, whose love was given freely without condition or expectation of reward. Elena placed her hand on Atlas's head, her fingers gentle against his graying fur. She reached out through every telepathic network in the Empire, sending a single thought that echoed across star systems. We thought humans conquered the stars through strength and determination. But the truth is different. It was these beings, these faithful companions, who conquered something far more important. They conquered our hearts. The impact was immediate and profound. Within a single year, dogs from Earth's carefully managed breeding programs became the most desired companions in the entire galaxy. Requests poured in from hundreds of worlds. And humanity's response? They simply smiled with quiet understanding. They didn't boast or brag about what they had always known. After all, they had understood this truth for 10,000 years of shared history. Man's best friend had always been the greatest force in existence. Not through violence or intimidation, but through something far more powerful. Through unconditional love that transcended species, planets, and the vast distances between stars. The end.